Okay. Today's daf is daf lamed beis. We're going to begin from daf lamed aleph omud sheni on the bottom, like 3 lines from the bottom. If you recall, the Mishnah we're discussing over here is if a person, the Mishnah says that if a person rapes, or we'll use the better word, ma'anes, he rapes his sister. So the Mishnah says that you would pay, of course, knas. You would pay the fine. The fine is 50 shekel. And who would you pay the fine to? If it's your sister, you probably pay it to your father. So that's what the Mishnah says, okay? Now, I want to tell you that, as you're probably aware, that if you're ma'anis, if a person's ma'anis, not only are you paying knas, you're paying tsar, ripoy, sheves, but you're paying tsar. Hi, okay, everybody's coming in. Hi, everyone. We're just beginning. Today's daf, very straightforward daf. It's not going to be long, 20 minutes. It's daf lamed beis, and we're starting from daf lamed aleph omud beis. So just to recap, basically, we learned in our Mishnah that if you're ma'anes, you rape a besula nara, you have to pay 50. You have to pay knas. But the Mishnah says that even if you're ma'anes, your sister, you have to pay the knas to your father. You pay the money to your father, and also we'll learn that ma'anes, if someone actually does a rape, he has to pay pagam and sar. There are other fines that you pay, but they're not fines; they're actually money value, because the bottom line is she's losing her virginity, so you have to pay that as well. So that's what the Mishnah says. Now, when you come onto, so the Gemara asks a question. Ruminu, I'll ask you a contradiction. We learned in the Masechta Makos, Elehein Aloikim. The following, if you have bia with the following people, you get malchus. If you have relations with your sister, aviv, the brother, the sister of your father from your father's side, a sister from your mother's side, your sister of your wife, your brother's wife, Val-Eshes Achi Aviv, and your aunt, basically your father's brother's wife, Val-Anida, and if you have relations with Anida, you get Malchus. So you get Malchus, right? Now we go to the top of the page, V'kai Milan, but we have a general rule. The general rule is the Eina Loike U'Mishalim. You don't pay Malchus, you don't get Malchus and pay. Right. Once you get, the pasuk says that when you have two punishments, you pick one. And since the Mishnah said that you get malchus, it's obviously you're not going to pay the fine. So the question is, how does our Mishnah discuss that you pay a fine when that Mishnah says in Masechta Malchus that you don't pay the fine, you get the malchus? So Ula is going to answer this contradiction. Ula could simply answer that our Mishnah is talking about that they didn't warn him. Right? You could answer simply, and therefore there's only the fine to pay, because the only time you get malchus, the only time you get lashes, is only if you're warned. And that Mishnah over there is talking about when you're warning him. But Ula is not going to answer that, because Ula is going to hold that even if you warn, Ula is very interesting. Ula is going to hold, this you have to hold. Ula is holding that even if there's a choice, that means they warned the guy, don't sleep with your sister, and he did it. Now he's faced with 2 punishments, malchus and paying the fine. Ula is going to hold that you pay the fine. You don't give the malchus. So therefore, Ula had to answer a question, how come over there you get malchus over Masechta Malchus and you're not paying the fine? Ula's answered, Loikash, it's not difficult. Our Mishnah is Bachoy Nara. When you had relations with your sister who's 12 years old. When she's 12, then there's a fine, there's a knas. But the Mishnah that says over there that you only get malchus because there is no fine. It's your adult sister. So that's why if you're ma'anis, your adult sister, there is no fine. That's why you get malchus. So the Gemara asks, but even if you had relations and you ma'anis, raped your adult sister, you should pay boishes, the embarrassment, upagam, and the loss of value. She lost her besulim with you. Answers the Gemara, b'shaita. We're talking about an imbecile, and therefore there is no value for because she's not going to get married anyway, and there's no embarrassment because she's not socially there, and therefore there is no embarrassment, no loss of value. But the Gemara says, but ikat sa'ara, but don't you have to pay her pain because it's a rape. So you have to pay the pain. And of course, all this money should go to your father. That says the Gemara b'mefuta. It's talking about you seduced her, so there was no pain. So she went willingly. So now the Gemara says, Ash the dos is lawful. Now that you gave that answer, you don't have to say it's your adult sister. It's talking about, they're both talking about a 12-year-old girl. And the Mishnah Malkus is referring to Bisaima Mufurta. It's an orphan, and she was seduced. The fact that she was seduced means that this girl went willingly. And if she went willingly, then there is no boishes, bagam, or anything else. Why? Because she, by going willingly, she actually forgave her brother for sleeping with her. And therefore there is no malchus in this situation. If there is no malchus in this, if there is no money value in this situation, there is only malchus. That's why the Mishnah Masechta Malchus says that what? You give him malchus and you don't give, and that's it. That's why you only get malchus. Alma. Okay, here's the main point of the sugya. Alma, from here we see Kesava Ula. Ula holds, right over here. Kesava Ula holds, Kol Hecha the Ika Mammon Malchus. Let's say you did an Avera, and they give you two choices. You did an Avera, and it has two choices. Either you pay a fine, or you get Malchus, right? So the Mishnah says, according to the way Ula would learn, Mamoyna Meshalim, Milka Loilaki. You would only get paid the money, and you wouldn't get Malchus. And that's why, if it was a Nara Basula that you warned him, and don't sleep with your sister, and he slept with his sister, it was Ma'anis' sister, Ula will hold that you have a choice. Malchus will pay a fine, you pay the fine. Now, so the question is, how do you know? How do you know that? Maybe you give the Malchus and don't pay them fine. And we don't know. Let me ask you a question. I mean, think about this. Which is worse, getting lashes or paying a fine? Sometimes you could say paying the money is easier, but sometimes you could say paying the money is harder. It's all relative. So that's why it's not easy to determine. You give him the more serious punishment or the more lighter punishment. You don't know. But anyway, so the Gemara says, how does Ula know this concept? How do you know that when there's a choice between money or paying Malchus, you give him the money, you fine him the money, and he's exempt from being lashed. Gamar, he learned it mechayvel b'chaveroi. If a certain person damaged his friend, let's say a person broke his friend's arm, right? So he did an avera, a loisa say of lo yosef, you're not allowed to hit your friend, and yet you have to pay the money. And therefore, the Torah says only pay the money, you don't get Malchus. So we see that if you do an Avera that has a choice between money and Malchus, you pay the money and you don't pay Malchus. So also, Avkol Hecha, in all cases, the Ika Mammon or Malchus, whenever there's going to be a choice of Mana Malchus, Mishalim, you'll pay the money, Milka Loilaki, you don't pay Malchus. So you learn it from damaging your friend, where you're over an Avera, Allah likes to say, don't hit your friend. And the Torah says, if you do hit your friend, you pay him all the money damages that, of breaking his arm, like he can't go to work or whatever it is, the doctor bills, but you don't get Malchus for that. So Gemara says, that how could you learn everything else, every other case from Choyvel B'Chaveira, from damaging his friend? Mal Choyvel B'Chaveira, when someone damages his friend, the truth is he did such a severe Avera that you're not paying one fine, you're paying 5 different fines. Shekain chayev b'chamisha devarim. He's chayev, he's liable to pay 5 different fines. He has to pay the doctor bills, the loss of wages, nezek tzar, ripoy, sheves, boishes. So all these things, pain and embarrassment. So he's paying 5 different things. So therefore, he's getting the severer punishment over there. Now, if you want the ima minor lakula, if you view when there's a choice of money and Malchus, and you're giving him the money situation, and that's the lighter of the two, right? So even if you're paying five different fines, but you're not getting lashed, so you want to learn that that's the lighter of the punishment. But you could say that the only time that the Torah says you take the lighter punishment is because only by choyvel b'chaveroi. only when you damage your friend. Shekain huta miklolei bebezdin. Because we see that even sometimes the courts are allowed to, lash somebody, give somebody lashes, right? So the idea of smacking somebody and hitting somebody is not a foreign concept. So maybe it's not such a severe avera, and therefore over there, when you have the choice between money and malchus, give him the money punishment, which is the lighter of the two punishments. But on the other hand, if somebody rapes or ma'anis somebody and has nus with somebody, and you have a choice between misa, mammon, and malchus, maybe the Torah wanted you to give him malchus and not mammon. So how does Ula know this concept by that you would give him the punishment of money and not malchus? Ella, says the Gemara, Gomam Eidim Zaimim. Ula learned it from the concept of Eidim Zaimim. What's the concept of Eidim Zaimim? It's simple. And Eid says that Reuven owes money to Shimon. He borrowed money. Reuven borrowed money from Shimon. And other Eidim come say, how do you Eidim say such a thing? You were with us, and therefore you're like a false Eidis. You're trying to cause Reuven a loss, to cause him to pay money to Shimon. The pasuk says that instead of Reuven paying, we make the Aiden pay. Now the Aiden did a big avera over here. The Torah says, Eloisa say, don't say false witnesses. So you have a choice, giving them malchus or having them pay the fine that the loss they were going to cause Reuven. The Torah says, make them pay the fine and not get malchus. So that's how you know ma Adim Zoimim, just like the case of Adim Zoimim, the Ika Mammon Umalchus. When there's a choice between finding them money or giving them malchus, they pay money, milkalei lucky, they don't get malchus. So also, so in our case also, when you have a choice, mafata, raping, or mafata, seducing, or ma'anis. So when there's a choice between money and malchus, you make them pay the money, milkalei lucky, they don't pay the malchus. Now, when the Torah says that Eidim Zaimimim pays money, maybe the Torah was going strict and have them, maybe money is, the Gemara doesn't know. Paying money might be more of a severe punishment than getting malchus. So therefore, maybe the Gemara is asking now, maybe the Torah went and told you to go severe by Eidim Zaimimim is because it's a big avera. Why? That's the only avera you get punished without getting warning. The case of Eidim Zaimimim, Shekain Einim Tzrichin Hasra. It's such a big avera that you don't need to warn somebody. Every other avera, before you punish them, they have to have a warning that they're going to get punished if they follow through on the avera. Eidim Zaimimim is a type of avera that you do it and you don't have to get warned. You can get punished if you're caught, even if you weren't warned beforehand. And nevertheless, so therefore, because it's such a severe avera, that's why the Torah said, give them the severe punishment. You have a choice between mammon and malchus. Mammon is more severe than malchus. Punish him with money. But if you learn that paying money is the lighter of the two punishments, so maybe the Torah is telling you go light over here by Eidim Zaimimim, because Eidim Zaimimim is a lighter avera. Now, how is Eidim Zaimimim as lighter avera? Shekain le also masa, because it's not an action that they're doing. They're not physically doing something. They're just moving their mouths and saying Reuven owes money to Shimon in court. So Mela. So therefore, perhaps over there, the Torah said, go light on the Eidim Zaimimim and make them only pay money when you have a choice between money and malchus. But maybe by znus, by oines, sumafata, when you have a choice between money and malchus, maybe the Torah would want you to give malchus and not the money. So the Gemara says, Ella, let's see, Ula Gomim Tavayu. Ula learned that you pay money because you learn from both of them. You learn from Chayvel Bechaveroi, and you learn from Eidim Zaimim. In both cases, you have a choice between money and malchus. In both cases, the Torah says, go punish the guy with money and not malchus. So also by Onis Mafata, you punish the guy with money and not malchus. So Gemara asks, but that's not a good learning, because because that common denominator, because the Ikamama Malchus, the Gemara says, just like the common denominator has money and malchus, and so therefore you pay money, you don't give malchus. So in all situations, the Torah says, pay money and don't give the malchus. So the Gemara asks, but the common denominator between Chayvel B'Chaverai and Eidim Zaimimim, because they're either strict averis, that's why the Torah said go strict, and maybe they're light averis, so therefore the Torah says go light. They both are strict averis. If you're learning that money is the lighter of the punishment, maybe they're light averis, that's why they get the lighter punishment. So the bottom line question is, where we're at the end of Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, bottom line question is, how does Ula know that if someone is ma'anes his sister and he was warned, don't do that, and therefore now he's caught, he did it, and now the Beis Din has a choice, either give him lashes or make him pay the fine. How does Ula know that you make him pay the fine and you don't make him pay the lashes and you don't give him lashes? So the Gemara says, Lamed Beis Amud Beis, Ella Ula tachas gomar. He learned the word tachas and the word tachas by somewhere else. Ksiv Hach, it says by ma'anes, by raping. Tachas asheina, because you rape, because you ma'anes her, you cause her a affliction, therefore you're getting punished. So the Torah uses the word tachas. Ksiv Hasam, and it says by choivel b'chaver, someone damages his friend, ayin tachas ayin, an eye for an eye. So it says the word tachas, and it says the word tachas by ma'anes. Mahasam, just like by choivel b'chaver, amoyna mashala milka loy loki. So you pay money and you don't get malchus. Kol heicha. In all situations. Now, this af kol heicha, you would only think it's only by oinus mafata, but the Gemara extends it that wherever in the whole Torah, an avera that a person does, that you're faced with a dilemma, the ikam mamaynu malchus, the Beis Din can either give this person malchus for the avera or mamayna for the avera. By the way, the Beis Din can't give him both because the Torah says kidi rishasai. You only punish a person once, and you don't punish him, you don't give him two punishments. So you have a choice. Give him one or the other. So Ula holds, you only pay money and you don't give malchus. So that's why Ula learned our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is talking about achoisoi nara, and even if they would have warned him, you would pay money. The Mishnah over there that says in malchus that you only get malchus and you don't pay money. You don't pay the fine, because that Mishnah is talking about mifata, seduction, and the Yisayman orphan. So she was Michael, all the knasses, she was Michael the money because she was, she went willingly to this nus. And therefore, that it's your sister. So therefore, in that case, that's why the Mishnah says over there that you get malchus because there is no money in that situation. That's the opinion of Ula. So remember, Ula says when there's a choice of money or malchus, you pay money and you don't pay malchus. One more thing, and that's the end. That's the end of the Mishnah. This is the other opinion against Ula. Rabbi Yochanan answers the contradiction. Even if you want to say that Mishnah over there is talking about the sister, that's a 12-year-old, and there's a choice. There's a choice. You get malchus, kan shehisraboy. That Mishnah over there is talking about when you warned him. So now you have faced with malchus and the fine. And therefore, the Torah said that the Mishnah holds you give a malchus, not the fine. Kan and our Mishnah is shloi hisraboy, and our Mishnah is talking about you didn't warn them. So our Mishnah, there's no choice. There's only a fine. There's no malchus because nobody warned him not to sleep with his sister. So therefore, you pay. Our Mishnah says you pay the fine. Over there, since you have it, they was warned. And now you have a choice between money and malchus. Rabbi Yochanan argues. Rabbi Yochanan holds you give him malchus and not mammon. Alma kasava Rabbi Yochanan kol heicha deika mammon and malchus. Whenever you have a choice, the Beis Din has a choice to punish the guy with money or malchus. Va'asrebe, and they warned him. Milka lucky, he gets malchus. Va'moyin loy mishal, and he doesn't pay money. So the Gemara says, Manole Rabbi Yochanan. How did Rabbi Yochanan know that when Beis Din is faced with that choice of punishing somebody with money or making him pay, making him pay the fine or giving him malchus, you give him the malchus? Amakra, because the pasuk says, "Kidei rishasai," you punish somebody once. You give somebody one punishment, you don't give him two. That's clear. So if he's faced with two punishments, you pick one. Usmichle, but then right afterward, the pasuk says, "Arbaim yakenu." We'll lash him 40 times, right? So we see that the one punishment that the Torah favors is the punishment of malchus over money. And that's why Rabbi Yochanan holds when you're faced with the choice of mammon or malchus, you give him mammon and you give him malchus and you don't give mammon. So the Gemara asks, according to Rabbi Yochanan, wait a second, is that always in all of Torah Kula? But when somebody damages his friend, he took a slap at his friend and broke his arm. The Ikamam and the Malchus, there's a choice between money and Malchus. And the Torah says, and maybe the Torah says, pay the 5 damages, and 5 fines, and you don't get Malchus. So we see that the Torah favors money over Malchus when you have a choice. You're going to say, maybe the Torah would favor Malchus. If they didn't give him a warning, that's when you pay the money. If they warn the guy, don't break your friend's arm. And if you do that, you're going to get Malchus. He would pay Malchus, not pay the money. Rabbi Yochanan said the name Rabbi Yochanan. If a guy took a whack at somebody and it wasn't worth a penny, in other words, he didn't embarrass him. It was a light tap. No damages. The guy could go back to work. But he slapped him. Loike, you get Malchus. So you get Malchus. So the Gemara says, hey, Chedami, what's the case Rabbi Yochanan is talking about? That if you slapped somebody, it's less than a shava pruta's worth of a slap, less than a penny's worth of a slap, you give him Malchus. Either if it's a case, the guy they wasn't warned. So if you're not warned, am I like it? Why are you giving him Malchus? Elapshit, it must be the Asrabe. They did warn him. And therefore, now let's make the deduction. The reason why you get Malchus is because there is no money. So therefore, there's no other punishment. You only get Malchus. The les po shvei pruta, there's no shave pruta. Ha is be shave pruta. But if there was a shvei pruta, if there was now you're faced with the choice of money and Malchus, in that case, the Torah favors money over Malchus. And so therefore, the question is, according to Rabbi Yochanan, we have a riboy that says when there's a choice between Malchus and Mammon, you pick Malchus and you favor Malchus over Mammon, over the monetary punishment. And how come? So the question is, how come if someone damages his friend, you pay money and you don't pay Malchus? Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Eloi says, that beferish ripsa Torah edim zoymel l'tashlumim. We have an extra riboy of the Torah. The Torah made an all-inclusive extra word to tell you that by edim zoymim, when there's a choice between money and Malchus, the Torah says l'tashlumin, you make them pay. You don't give the edim zoymim Malchus. Hachanami, also over here, beferish ripsa Torah, by chayvel b'chaveroi l'tashlumin. The Torah says beferish outright that by Chayvul B'Chaveira is different than all over Torah. The Chayvul B'Chaveira, you pay money. The Heichi Itmid Rabbi Eloi, where did Rabbi Eloi give his teaching of Eidim Zaymimim? On this following case, it's very simple. Two Eidim said, Reuven owes his friend 200 zuz. And then we found out those Eidim were falsified. In other words, another 2 Eidim came and said, how could you say Eidus that the Reuven owes somebody 200 zuz? At that time of the Eidus, you were with us, and therefore you're saying a false testimony. So they did say a false testimony. The Torah believes the second pair of Eidim. So now the first pair of Eidim, either you should give them Malchus or you make them pay the money. Loikin u'mishalim. So Rameir holds they get Malchus and they pay. They get both punishments. Why? Because the Torah says don't say Eidus falsely. So that's the law that you get Malchus on. And then the Torah says if you cause somebody a loss, you have to reimburse the guy. So that's another pasuk. So since it's from different psukim, Rameir holds, Divrei Rameir, that you give them both. The Eidim Zerman get Malchus and they pay. But the Chachamim say, no, you make them pay and they call them a shalom, einam loika. Because they're paying, they don't get the Malchus. So on that, the Gemara asks, why don't we say that we give them Malchus and not make them pay? On this, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Eloi, the Torah made the all-inclusive and said Torah that the Eidim Zomimim only pay and they don't get the Malchus. Where did the Torah make this inclusive? Because the pasuk says, you punish the Eidim Zomimim what they intended to cause a loss to their friend. Okay, that's one pasuk. Now the Torah says, so then the Torah says, yad biyad. If they wanted to cause a loss of a hand, you take off their hand. Normally, why does the Torah give examples of cases of what they wanted to do, you make them pay. And one of the examples is yad b'yad, regel b'regel. Whatever they wanted to do, that's what you punish the Edom Zayimim. Why does the Torah add these words yad b'yad? Because when the Torah is telling you that they should only be paying, we only want them to pay like money, something that's handed over from hand to hand. So again, there is a special riboy, a special Torah said, a special addition that here is different. Because Edom Zayimim, you should make them pay instead of giving them malchus. Umanihu mammon. You make them pay money and you don't give them malchus. So that's the special riboy by Edom Zayimim. So Gemara concludes, chayvel b'chaver nami. So chayvel, when you damage your friend, that's also mikdei leksiv. It says in the pasuk kashi also ken also loy. When someone damages his friend, the Torah says whatever he did, you do back to him. And then the Torah says eye for an eye, a regel for a foot. When he caused a wound to somebody else, we give it back to him. Lamali, why does the Torah repeat it? It says now it should be given to him. So the Torah is saying, we only find the guy something that he can give and pay with his hands. And therefore he pays money and not malchus. So again, Rabbi Yochanan, this ends the daf. Rabbi Yochanan's opinion is that what? That when the Torah, when you're faced with a dilemma, Bezdin's faced with a dilemma, like by mafainis or mafata, by rape, they faced with a dilemma. If the guy did it with warning, and they can give him malchus, and they can make him pay the fine, and that you can only give them one punishment. According to Rabbi Yochanan, you give them the malchus and not the money fine. And those are the two exceptions, because there's special rebus of the Torah that they get punished by the money, but they don't get punished by the malchus. But Ula held the opposite of Rabbi Yochanan, and we're going to go further on this discussion tomorrow. What did Ula hold? When someone is ma'anis, his sister, and he was warned, and therefore Bezdin is faced with the choice, giving him money or malchus, Bezdin should favor money, punish him with the money situation, and not with malchus, because Ula has a gzeira shava, tachas, from ayin tachas ayin to chayvel b'chavera, just like chayvel b'chavera, you pay money and not malchus. So also by ayinis mafata, we have a choice. So wherever you have a choice between mammon and malchus, you favor money over malchus. This ends the daf.
Baruch, can you clarify one point?